Hello, everyone. Welcome to Onboarding for Disaster Cycle Services in the Northern New England region. I appreciate you taking the time to get ready to serve the American Red Cross mission. My name is Ashley St. Louis. I am your Disaster Workforce Engagement Manager, also referred to as the DWE Manager. You'll hear this term DWE, Disaster Workforce Engagement, used to describe my role, my colleague Jillian Washburn's role, the DWE Specialist, as well as a whole team of volunteers that will support you throughout your journey. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Today's agenda, we're going to go over disaster cycle services structure and support, local opportunities and next steps, as well as some tools and resources for your success. So to get started, I just want to make sure everybody understands our division lineup before we jump into the regional lineup. So we are in the Northeast Division, as you see on the map here. That's the Northeast of the United States and includes not only our region of Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire, but also New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, etc. So you'll often hear communication about divisional level trainings, divisional newsletters, divisional deployment. And so for you to have that visual, this is what they're talking about when they mean division. So we are part of the Northeast as well as the Northern New England region. Our region is also made up of 7 territories. You'll see how it is split on this color-coded map throughout our geography, and then we'll break it down by county on the. So every territory has a disaster program manager, a DPM. This is going to be like your home coach and the person that you're going to connect with next. The next step after this session is to book an appointment to meet your DPM. They're the ones that are going to get your boots on the ground on that local level and engage you in your current interests and the needs of your specific local community. So as you see here, every territory's name is at the top and the counties that fall within it are listed below. So have a look at what your territory is going to be, and we'll go on to the next slide. So I want to explain to you what your support and leadership structure really looks like in the Red Cross. It's going to vary depending on the specific interest and involvement that you get into, as well as your geographic location. Some things, it doesn't matter where you're located geographically within our region, it's covered on a regional level. For example, myself, the DWE, Disaster Workforce Engagement Manager, I cover the entire region. So although geographically I live in the northern Maine region, I am a northern New England disaster workforce engagement manager, and I support you throughout various functions in your volunteer path that we'll go over in a little bit. So you also have that regional support structure for preparedness and logistics, as well as all of our DPMs, our disaster program managers. Each one of them support all things disaster within their territory that we just looked at, that's broken up by county. But each one of them also serves as the functional expert for something within our region. So I tell you this not because I expect you to remember any of these names or position titles that I'm rattling off, but I just want you to understand the different connections that you're going to have. And I certainly don't want you to miss an opportunity because you didn't understand why somebody was communicating with you. So I'm going to use the example of, say, those of you listening to this right now live in the southern Maine territory. Tova Zampar will be your disaster program manager, your DPM. However, even though you don't live in Vermont North, Should you be interested in recovery, you are going to be connected with Michaela, the DPM for Vermont North, because she's our functional expert in recovery. Likewise, say none of you listening to this live in New Hampshire North. If you were interested in becoming one of our duty officers, you would be referred to the New Hampshire North Disaster Program Manager, DPM, Sarah, because she's the functional expert for our duty officers. So you'll be connected to certainly more than one person along your volunteer path. And as your interests grow, so will your connections. So again, I don't say this for you to necessarily remember any of the names or positions I just said, but for you to just understand that you're going to have many different connections and contacts and levels of support for you. Next, we're going to talk about levels of engagement. So we're going to break it down into blue sky and gray sky engagement. Blue sky being steady state, all is okay. These are the things we do every day. Gray sky being operational state, meaning we ourselves have become a disaster relief operation, or we're going to use our skills and qualifications to deploy to another disaster relief operation. So first we're going to talk about blue sky engagement, steady state engagement. So first, let me just say for all new volunteers, I recommend that you find an interest in both. You can certainly travel the path to get trained up for an opportunity in blue sky as well as gray sky simultaneously. Blue sky engagement is a lot more scheduled and planned. However, you'll see the first thing listed in steady state is engaging in local operations, disaster action team. This is our single and multifamily fires that happen in our local communities. Now, you might be thinking a single or multifamily fire, that sounds kind of dark and gloomy, right? Why is that listed under blue sky? Well, the reason that it is because despite being in a disaster relief operation, we will continue to provide that support to single and multifamily fires. So we will always engage in those local operations with our disaster action team folks, our duty officers, and several other people that we'll talk about in just a moment. Also in steady state, we do what I'm doing right here. We recruit, engage, train, and develop volunteers. Our disaster workforce engagement team, the DWE team, as I referenced earlier, we focus on training and developing volunteers, getting you all engaged, making sure you're prepared for your assignments. We also come back into your lives for recognition, training, leadership development opportunities, as well as deployment. So those are all opportunities that you can help supporting your fellow Red Crossers. We also prepare our communities through different preparedness programs that we'll talk about in just a little bit. We also build and maintain partnerships throughout our fire departments and emergency management agencies, as well as other nonprofits. We like to say showing up to a disaster relief operation, that's no time to exchange business cards, right? We want to have these partnerships in place ahead of time. And the American Red Cross has to be called to respond. We can't just self-deploy. So we have to make sure our partners know about us. They know how we can support. They know about our different programs. And you as volunteers can help build and maintain those partner relationships. We also maintain supplies, fleet, and equipment. Obviously, throughout the cycle of disaster cycle services, we prepare, we respond, and we recover. All of that requires supplies, fleet, and equipment. We have numerous emergency trailers throughout our 3 states, as well as offices, warehouse storage, vehicles such as the emergency response vehicles, as well as numerous Red Cross SUVs, trucks, and vans throughout our region. We have volunteers that help support these fleet operations on a daily basis. So blue sky, again, that's steady state. That's what we do every day. Those are local opportunities. And in general, we qualify with position. So a little bit more about those blue sky engagement. Our preparedness programs are a great way to engage our communities and to make sure they're prepared. The more prepared we are during a disaster, obviously the less likely for disastrous impacts. So all of these different preparedness programs I tell you about for two different reasons. One, because it's certainly worth the 30 minutes of each class to be the participant in. Be Red Cross Ready will help you be prepared for any emergencies like hurricanes, wildfires, tornadoes, etc. It'll help you develop a go bag, make a plan for your household, and keep your family safe. The hands-only CPR training, again, it's 30 minutes of your time, but you'll be qualified to administer hands-only CPR. And then if you're interested in both of those programs, you can also become trained to be an instructor in them and help give those presentations to fellow Red Crossers, members of the community, different organizations, etc. So we also have a Ready Rating program, which is designed to be a free membership to help businesses and other organizations develop an emergency plan or get their organization to a point where they are ready, getting that A+ ready rating. So these are all programs that you can become trained instructors in and help communities. We also have preparedness programs specifically for kids. Prepare with Pedro in the Pillowcase Project. These are great programs to help children prepare in the event of an emergency, and you can become trained instructors in this. My favorite is the Home Fire Campaign, and the way to get engaged with the Home Fire Campaign can happen on a few different levels. This is something that's typically scheduled out within your local communities where we partner with local fire departments, and we all know that we're going to spend the last Saturday of this month at X location from this time to this time, going around that community, installing smoke alarms in people's homes for free, educating them on fire safety, help them create an escape plan for their house. This is a free program that we offer to anyone that lives in any of our communities. We'll go to their house, install 10-year lithium ion battery smoke alarms in their homes for free, educate them on fire safety, and give them some educational materials to use. You can also become part of a smaller home fire campaign team on your local territory level and fulfill individual requests that folks can submit at any time. I'd also like to point out that our home fire campaign is also free for all of you. Check your smoke alarms, make sure they work, make sure they have proper placement, but this is a great thing to get trained up on and become. Uh, Community events also happen. I like to put this visual in here just to remind you guys that it's not in a position description, but we do this too. We support a lot of community events and go out just to be Red Crossers, support our community, and support each other. We participate in different parades, hometown days, trick or treats, touch a trucks, many different things. So if you see that invite, I encourage you to participate. Next, we're going to talk about the path of serving the client in areas where you can support. So each one of these positions has kind of something unique about it that I'll identify. So this is in terms of single and multifamily fires within our communities and the path of how we serve our clients. So first, all calls go into our duty officers. This is like the hub of all things disaster action team. They're the ones that get the fire call and then dispatch our disaster action team. The duty officers are an amazing dedicated team of volunteers that work on a regional level. This is a strictly virtual position. and you do cover 6-hour shifts. After training, shadowing, you then sign up to cover shifts for the region. It's a great opportunity to get involved. The duty officers are the ones that dispatch. Our DAT responders, our disaster action team folks, the ones that are going to put their boots on the ground. The duty officers are going to make sure they get on and off the scene safely. And our disaster action team folks are going to be the first face that client sees after a disaster. So additional training is needed for both of these roles, as you need access to a different system. The disaster action team responder, again, likely is that first face that client is seeing. So there's also some data entry that goes into it so you can make sure we can provide them services and other financial assistance. You're able to give them a little bit of what I like to call walking around money for their rate then needs, and then you're able to refer them to our specialized teams. So this next line, the specialized teams, they all do require state licenses. So we have amazing volunteers within disaster health services, disaster mental health, and disaster spiritual care. All of these folks are available to assist the client after a disaster. Our health services folks can help them get back prescriptions, glasses, contacts, canes, dentures, walkers, wheelchairs, anything health service related that they may have lost in the fire. And then our disaster mental health folks are also there for us too. So I really love that about our region. Our disaster mental health volunteers also help fellow Red Crossers. You'll often be assigned a disaster mental health volunteer when you go on national deployments, and they also tend to check in on you after a rough local response. So amazing group of folks, all requiring state licenses there. The next and kind of last line of defense in us helping the clients after single and multifamily fires is our recovery and casework folks. So this is typically a virtual position when it's done at a local level. However, if we were to open a shelter or become a disaster relief operation, you will see these recovery and caseworker folks being in person. So these are the folks that help those clients find the resources they need to rebuild after the fire. So our recovery and casework folks, they tend not to be as strictly right now scheduled like our disaster action team response and duty officers. It's usually within a 24-hour time frame. You connect with the client and you help them again find those resources they need to rebuild. So all great opportunities to get involved in on the local level and help support our communities that are affected by single and multifamily fires. A little bit more on response. So mass care is becoming more and more important on every level, on a local level and on a national level. So why is mass care so important? Well, mass care is what the essential support function is for American Red Cross. So when you think about a large scale disaster and all the different government partners and state organizations, other nonprofits, many different players are coming to the game at this point, right? Well, we have to know what position we're all going to play ahead of time. And FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, they're who designates that for disaster response organizations. And ours is mass care. So that means above all else, the American Red Cross must provide mass care services on a disaster relief operation. So this does not encompass all, but this encompasses most of what we do in mass care. We shelter them. We make sure they have a roof over their head. We feed them. We make sure that they are fed every day. We make sure that they have emergency supplies to help clean up afterwards. One not listed here is reunification. We also help connect folks after a disaster. And then also our ERV drivers, our emergency response vehicle drivers are playing a bigger and bigger role within mass care. I like to say it's like an ambulance with an ice cream truck window. Our emergency response vehicles are crucial getting out to communities and neighborhoods affected by disaster to be able to provide those meals and those emergency supplies. So these are all great things to be qualified in. I really highly recommend every Red Crosser at the very least gets trained in mass care sheltering, as you never know when an event will impact our local communities and we'll need to help stand up a shelter or even go to a shelter ourselves. This is also one of the highest sought after positions when it comes to national response. So if you are interested in getting that national deployment opportunity, I like to say mass care qualifications are kind of like the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak. So a great opportunity within mass care that really every Red Crosser should be trained and ready for. Canteening is also a great service we provide that you're not really going to find listed in a manual. So when we have local fires where people aren't impacted, but you hear several different fire departments are out there fighting the fire for an extended period of time, we can get called upon for canteen services where we go out and we support the firefighters. So you'll see in the left side there, that's our ERV, our emergency response vehicle. We take that emergency response vehicle out to the scene and provide those firefighters snacks and waters and a nice place to sit down and take a break. A great way to get involved in your local community. This is, I love visuals. So just to show you some of our latest responses, this was just in December in Rumford. We had some folks out there doing a lot of damage assessment, helping the people affected by this is kind of what a typical shelter looks like. This was our Lewiston shelter. And of course, giving out teddy bears and bringing those big smiles to kids' faces is part of what we do also. We bring hope. So now we're going to talk about gray sky engagement. We kind of touched upon it right then with mass care, but we're going to kind of jump all the way in. So gray sky is also known as operational state. That's when we're talking about a disaster relief operation or DRO. This could be at home or away, and we typically qualify with GAPs. What is a GAP? A GAP stands for Group Activity Position. This indicates the qualifications and skills that we have to deploy to a disaster relief operation. So we typically open shelters and meet emergency needs. You're going to probably report to a different person during a gray sky operational state disaster relief operation than you would during blue sky. And you also will be recruited and assigned through staff services or your local disaster workforce engagement team. So on a normal kind of blue sky engagement level, those opportunities are typically going to be brought to you by your disaster program manager, your DPM. But when it comes to gray sky, you're going to be contacted by your disaster workforce engagement team or staff services to be deployed. Jillian Washburn, our disaster workforce engagement specialist, is the lead on deployments, and more than likely it will be her that would contact you. So we're going to jump into what a gap is and what these different opportunities are going to be for you to get engaged in. So again, what is a gap? It stands for group activity position. What that identifies is the group identifies that topical area of interest. The activity is a more specific activity within that group. And then the position is the level of acquired training, experience, and scope of responsibility. So we're going to break this down. So this chart here, I like to say, is the periodic table of all things GAP. It also includes each acronym for each GAP. So first, let's start with position, though, because that's the easiest, okay? So position. Only 4 options, with the exception of you will see there is a specialist position now for disaster action team, but let's just pretend that doesn't exist for the sake of understanding. So positions, we have service associate, supervisor, manager, and chief. Now, this one's easy to cover because we are just starting out, right? So the only thing we need to focus on is service associate, SA, because to be a supervisor, you have to first be an SA and then actually have experience deploying within that position. So all we need to focus on is service associate SA when it comes to the position part. Now the groups, I just made it bigger here. So there are 10 different groups that you can get involved in. So once you identify the group, you're then going to identify the activity. So you see the very top line is the group response, mass care, client care, individual disaster care, recovery, etc. Every box below that top box is the activity within that group. So I would like to use the orange boxes as an example, mass care. So I want to get qualified in mass care sheltering service associate, or mass care feeding service associate, or mass care distribution of emergency supplies service associate, or mass care reunification service associate. Does that make sense? I hope so. So this chart here is just to help you identify some opportunities on that other gap chart that I showed you. So the solid color boxes, the ones that are filled in, these identify opportunities that are strictly client facing. So if you want to be client facing, these opportunities will be some great ones for you. Now the other boxes, the ones that are just outlined, those identify the boxes that are either partner facing, fellow Red Crosser facing, or supply and fleet facing. So just a good way to help you identify some opportunities. So now we're going to talk about next steps. That's in your disaster start guide. So before we go there, let me just make sure you know to receive credit for viewing this onboarding session, what I need you to do is in the YouTube video comments section, enter your first and last name, the name of the county you live in, and then tell me something you're most excited for. If it's Red Cross related in the material we went over today, great. If it's an upcoming trip you have out of the country, that's cool too. Just tell me something you're most excited for, and we can get you marked down as receiving credit for this session. So the disaster start guide you have already been given from Irene Lang with your welcome to disaster email. And then I'm going to resend it to you after I receive notification that you've completed this session, but this is the first page of it. So you guys are in the middle step right now. You're viewing the onboarding session. The next step is going to be to book your DPM. So you're going to click that link. It's going to open up for you all available slots on my calendar. Book something that works for you. As soon as you book that, I'm going to send that over to your DPM, your disaster program manager, and then the three of us will connect via Teams. We'll talk about next steps. Hopefully you've identified an area of interest and we'll work on getting your boots on the ground. The other thing I want you to do for me after this is submit a request for your ID badge. The link is right there. Just a selfie headshot type photo is fine, and we'll get you a badge, lanyard, and vest in the mail. So are you ready to continue on? I hope so. Hopefully all of you have already done the initial 3 EDGE courses using EDGE as a learner, disaster cycle services and overview, and everyone is welcome. So if you see down at the bottom here where that little computer guy is saying no more, no more, if you are ready to continue on and want more, those links will bring you to all training requirements and all the position descriptions. I do encourage you guys to continue on in your training and not wait for that DPM session, and get started if you've already identified something of interest. So page 2 of your start guide has initial resources for you guys to reference. If you have not viewed this video already, please do so. It explains how to use Volunteer Connection, what each tab means, where you find shifts to sign up for, where you're going to find your local disaster cycle services monthly meetings where you'll find regional trainings. There's also a small starter acronym list for you, as well as instructions on how to download and use the app. Just a few self-care things before we go. It starts with your own safety, okay? Make sure you have a kit. Make sure you have a plan. Make sure you stay informed. Check out our website for some resources to do so if you haven't already. But every Red Crosser should be prepared for themselves and their household and their loved ones. Also, some fun kind of Red Cross apps to download. The Volunteer Connection app is already referenced. Please download that. Makes it wicked easy for you to add hours, to view calendar shifts, to find fellow Red Crossers. But these are just some other Red Cross apps that may become useful for you, especially the emergency app. I like the Pet First Aid myself. And some quick reminders after this. Okay, so remember to be proactive and participate. Make sure you log your hours. Start developing towards your first blue sky and gray sky position, and explore any opportunities as you find appropriate. Make sure you communicate with us, okay? We are here for you. You have my contact info. You have Irene's contact info. We're going to get you over to your disaster program manager, and all of their info is in the back of your disaster guide as well. So you do have their contact info. We're going to set up that meeting. Make sure you check your trainings and you've done those 3 edge courses, but please feel free to continue on. All right. If you have any questions, please reach out to me anytime. Email, text, phone call, whatever is good for you is good for me. And I'm looking forward to seeing where your boots land. Thank you all so much for giving me your time today and to this recording. You will receive an email shortly with your next steps and start guide. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate all the time that you are giving to serve something much bigger than yourself. Congratulations. Take care.